Welcome everybody. Quilt artist Pat Bishop has been quilting since the 70s, but recently her focus has been getting further and further away from reality with stunning results. See for yourself. Plus, log cabin block reimagined. Up next on The Quilt Show. And now, your hosts for The Quilt Show, Alex Anderson and Ricky Timms.
Welcome to The Quilt Show, everyone.
The quilts you're going to see in this show, I've already got goosebumps thinking about it. Our guest today is from Wisconsin. Her name is Pat Bishop. Welcome to The Quilt Show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're so glad.
Well, I want to just start in with quilts and then we'll dig down into your history about the whole thing, okay? So you're known for abstracting and simplifying objects. Is this kind of like where you're headed, right?
Yeah, I like to abstract using simplifying as a method of abstracting.
Okay.
But you really did kind of realism at first.
I did.
The first quilt that we're going to see.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Is what's it called?
Walk of the Cranes.
And
Look at that. Isn't it beautiful, Alex?
Well, it's so beautiful. It ended up on the cover of a magazine, Quilting Arts.
Yeah, super.
Beautiful, beautiful. And where do you own that quilt? Where is it now?
It's currently owned by Northeast Wisconsin Technical College in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
But you know what? You could leave it here with me and not even tell them because
Oh, okay.
I love the
That's
light and
beautiful,
shadow in that.
beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
So this, what year would that have been? Just
2006, I believe that was.
okay. So this has been a while.
Yeah.
And I just want to point this quilt out because you are. What's the phrase that you're using now? You're leaving reality
yeah.
or
leaving reality behind.
leaving reality.
And I'm with you.
behind.
I am with you on that.
Yeah. So let's take a look at the next quilt. I want to watch this evolution. This is still very realistic, though, right?
It's still simplified. It's abstract.
It is. It is. It starts with an object or a subject that we know what it is, but you're starting to break it down and simplify it. Those birds are all over the place in Wisconsin, aren't
Well,
they?
that one is the whooping crane. So there aren't that many.
Oh,
There is
yeah.
a preserve in Baraboo, Wisconsin.
Okay,
But
okay.
the whooping crane was on the endangered species list. I don't know if it still is. But there's a lot of sandhill cranes, which you saw in Walk of the Cranes.
In the first
Okay.
crane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first one.
All I know is when we go there, there's birds on the shore, and you kind of don't want to be there after they've been there.
No, I know what you mean.
Okay, and the next quilt. Oh,
Wow. Tell us about this.
This is nutmeg, and as you can see, the background is very simplified, so that's kind of the progression. And when I abstract, I cut my fabrics very choppily. I try not to have any rounded, you won't see many rounded cuts on my pieces. I like to just cut the fabric in chops and so that it looks not real,
Pat,
but
let's
somewhat
talk,
real.
Let's talk about the construction technique just a little bit, so
what I was
people,
thinking,
so they
yeah.
know. Is it applique? Is it patchwork? Is it collage? What's happening here?
It's fused applique.
Okay.
and then you just quilt on top of it to hold it down type
Right.
deal?
But the first thing I do is I will do the subject first, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll do that on parchment so that I can then audition the backgrounds,
Okay.
because the subject is the most important part.
Exactly.
And I never know. You know, if I start in the background and then do the foreground, you know, then I'm kind of
You're tied
stuck
to
with
whatever it is.
Yeah, and it just
Exactly.
makes more sense to do it
Exactly.
the other way around.
As we move to the next quilt, I just want to say I love the name Nutmeg. Is this a
It's an actual Scottish Highland
Scottish
cow.
Highland, yeah.
Yes.
Where do you get your imagery?
Well, usually it's my own photographs, like this next one is my own photograph, but Nutmeg was a friend of my daughter's who had a hobby farm and all goats and donkeys and all kinds of animals, and I asked her if I could use that image. And
Now, you're not just about cloth, you also have done rose mulling, and explain what that is, please.
rose mulling is Norwegian decorative painting on wood.
Wood.
Right, with oil paints. And I did that way back in my early years and got tired of the smell of the oil paint and
Oh, right.
getting oil on your clothing and furniture. It was just kind of,
I have
got
a bunch
over
of those
it.
pieces.
Well, I don't want to leave. We looked briefly at this, but now let's talk about it. The name, and tell us a little bit about it.
This is Skippy, and Skippy is my brother Nick's dog. I always get together with my brothers and sisters for lunch once a month now that we're all retired, except for one sister that lives in Colorado. But Nick has this dog named Skippy, and Skippy is old, diabetic, blind. You know, he can't get around much, but he's fine. He's not complaining. And one day for lunch, he was laying on the floor, and I just got down on the floor and took his picture, and I thought, I need to make that a quilt.
Do you still have Skippy?
No, Skippy's not around
Sorry.
anymore.
Well, then that makes it even more special.
Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned your brother, and you mentioned your family gets together. Family's big for you. You have big family reunions.
Yes, we do.
I now understand you live on a lake, but you didn't
Yes.
always. So tell us a little bit about that.
My parents bought this lake property 30, 40 years ago, and I used to come up there with my brothers, and we would park our campers in the yard because the cabin is really small and old. Eventually, well, when my parents passed away, then no one else wanted the cottage, and my husband and I really liked it. We would come up there on vacations, and so we bought it, tore down the cabin, and built our dream house. So,
And a studio.
And a studio that overlooks the lake, and I just love it.
I love that because I know as we're looking at these quilts, I am getting a sense that your inspiration, which is what should happen, is coming from your environment, from
Right.
your family, from your neighbors, from your dog, and from the scenery that's around you. Let's look at the next quilt.
Oh boy.
Okay, this one's going home with me.
Oh boy.
This one's going home with me.
Okay, that one doesn't really come from my environment, but it's kind of my...
No, it comes from mine. I'm sorry, you have no idea how connected I am to ravens.
I heard that. So during the pandemic, I started doing abstract painting with acrylics, and that's kind of how the background of this quilt came about. But
excuse me, did you do the bird first?
I did the bird first.
Okay, I just wanted,
yes.
okay, then the background came,
Then the
sorry.
background.
Okay.
Yes, and it's kind of my warning for the earth. You know, we need to take care of this place, or, you know.
We have to take care
Yeah.
of this place.
So that's kind of why I do a lot of nature, because I want people to see that, you know, we need to protect this. This is the most important thing to our survival. So.
Now, in 2007, you have 2 art quilts that got juried into the IQF, which is Houston.
Right.
Did you get anything?
Yes, I did. I entered both of the quilts, and they both got into the exhibits. I got a call one day, a couple months later, saying your quilt was accepted into Houston. You're going to be getting a ribbon. We'd like you to come down and receive your award.
Oh, well, then you know it's something that's not
Yeah.
just honorable mention.
Yeah. And then, so that was cool. I was thrilled. I went home that same day, and there was a message on my answering machine to call International Quilt Festival, and I called them and I said, I already got the message. I know my quilt's getting in, and I'm getting a ribbon. Thank you very much. And she said, well, which quilt was that? And I said, well, that was Globe Thistle. She said, well, we're talking about the dog bone quilt. So you're getting a ribbon on that quilt as well. Yeah.
Both.
So
How
it's like,
exciting. And you know,
Yes.
you're still being a bit humble because you are a juried-in SAQA juried artist, which is a huge honor as well.
yes.
So you guys,
You know what it is?
There's
It's
there's
the Cool Kid
some
Club.
talent right here. Yeah. Let's look at this. Oh my gosh.
This is John Phillip. Again, I painted the background because, well, John Phillip is a foreign exchange student of my daughter Tracy and her husband Tim, and he comes back and he's kind of been adopted. He's part of the family. He came back at Christmas a couple times and came up to our Christmas Eve party,
From where?
Germany.
Okay, wonderful.
And the kids all walked out on the lake because it was a weird day. It was really foggy, and it was they just wanted to go walk into the fog. And as they were coming back, my daughter Jessica took a picture of John Phillip, and you couldn't tell the ice from the sky, and it was just
Beautiful.
It just spoke to me, and that's
Beautiful. Well, I can't wait to get started because with Ricky, you're going to show how you can take a subject matter and then start to abstract it, correct?
Yes.
And I'm loving this. I love your style. The vibe of these quilts is just fabulous.
I agree.
Thank you.
Stick around, everybody.
On the next quilt show, the patchwork wonder from Down Under, Jen Kingwell, is here to unveil our TQS 2024 BOM that she designed.
Jen is known for her fresh, playful designs and her handwork.
Even if you prefer piecing and quilting on a machine, what Jen is doing by hand may surprise you.
And now all I'm going to do at the back is just literally swing that seam allowance over to the other side. It is so simple.
From hand piecing to hand quilting to embroidered quilting, Jen is sharing some of her tips to make quilters pine for her patterns and notions.
Tune in for our 2024 Block of the Month, Pick a Petal, and may you soon be sowing your garden of happy fabric flowers.
Join us and get your year off to a great start on thequiltshow.com.
We're having a great time with Pat Bishop. I so enjoyed seeing your quilts at the top of the show. Truly, really inspiring. And I love the fact that you're trying to step out of reality. And I know that's like couldn't we do that a little bit and feel free? But in this section, you're going to basically take a landscape, which is very real. We're going to extract it. We're going to give the feeling of the landscape, and you've done that so well in so many of the quilts that we saw. And we're going to do it kind of in a small scale so people can make it accessible. Right.
And it's non-threatening. It's easy for beginners. They don't feel like they have to be artists to do this, and I think it makes it more fun for them.
Well, I'm looking forward to the process. So tell me what we start with to make this happen.
Well, we start with some batting, and I use polyester felt for my batting because it's got a nice firmness to it. It's inexpensive. I buy it off the bolt.
So, all right, so in this particular case here, that is the middle layer. Of course, it's typical with the quilt. But you do have a backing, so tell us about that.
So backing is just any cotton or whatever fabric you have, and I'm going to fuse that with Transweb fusible.
So the batting is going to get fused to the backing?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Right. That just makes it simpler. We have everything all done. We don't have to pin.
Now, my brain's going backwards because quilters are used to making their quilt tops first, and you're starting with the back.
Well, in this case, since it's such a small one, it just makes sense
to get that done. And even with your larger quilts, do you ever kind of work this way where you're building on a foundation?
Normally, no. I normally start with my subject, complete that, and then I audition the backgrounds.
Okay, but we're doing a little mini landscape here, so this will work.
Yes.
All right, so then on top of the batting, I see paper.
This is another piece of Transweb, and this is going to be fused to the front, and then when I rip off the paper, then that's going to be our working surface.
Okay, now tell me about Transweb. I'm not familiar with it.
Transweb is a fusible similar to Wonder Under, only it's a little more lightweight, and the reason I use it is because I use Invisifil thread by Wonderfil, which is 100 weight. And when I use a lightweight thread, it will break when I'm using a
heavier fusible.
Yeah, that has more gunk.
So this is really friendly for those really fine threads.
Right.
That's good to know. All right, so you've got one that's all assembled over there, and I noticed that there's some lines that have been drawn on it.
This is going to be a landscape, so we're going to start. This is going to be our sky area, and this is going to be our horizon area in this range, and this will be our ground. We're going to start at the top and work our way down.
Okay, now let's talk about fabrics because you've already got a little, well, let me show this. Let me get to this. I want to show you guys, this is kind of where we're about to head to, right?
Right.
It is a very landscape feeling, but it is obviously abstract. So this is kind of where we're headed on this particular little demo. Let's talk about the fabrics.
The fabrics I like to use could be anything. Recycled, I like to use some silk. I like things with some texture, like this one has a lot of texture.
That's a
linens, hand-dyed linens, damask tablecloths dye up great and make nice texture. And
Do you dye them yourself
Yes,
sometimes?
sometimes,
Yeah.
yes. But I'm looking for variety, and you'll notice they're not all the same width. They're different widths. Some are cut, some are ripped, some are skinnier on one end. I like to have all of that.
Less rigid.
Yeah.
Flexibility.
Right.
Okay.
Free.
All right. So you're saying you're starting with sky. What are the considerations? You've got an entire pile of sky fabric here.
Yes, I'm going to start with one dark one across the top, just because it's easier to, when you're finishing it, to not have to worry about having multiple pieces on that first
So
strip.
wider at the top.
Right.
Okay.
Well, wider and one single piece.
Okay. Okay.
So when I continue to build, I will have them at, no, you'll notice that one's a lot skinnier, but I'm still kind of in the darkness here.
Okay.
And I'll put them, I'll vary where they end up, where they start, how high or low. I don't want them straight across like that. That just is boring to
So
me.
show me where the straight across.
So if this was
Oh, I
like
see
that,
what you're saying.
when these ends meet, it just is not interesting.
Right there. No,
Yes.
thank you.
No,
Offset
I
it a
will-
little bit.
Yes. And that's kind of the way it goes through the whole thing. And you'll see my starting and ending spots will change.
What inspired you to work like this?
Well,
Was there
that's
a
a good
pivotal
question.
point? Yeah.
I learned this technique from Sue Benner.
Oh, yes.
Only
Sue's
I
been on our
tweaked it.
show.
Yes, and I watched that show and really enjoyed it. I've taken a couple classes with her, but she does hers a little differently. She has a fusible on her strips, and my fusible
Yeah.
is
It's on the actual batting.
on the batting, so I don't have to have pre-fused strips.
It also, I'm seeing it also gives you the flexibility for the fact that you have torn it, that the frayed texture remains frayed texture in your finished piece because it's not fused on the back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And I can change this any.
Now I'm watching you make changes, but I'm not hearing why you're making those changes.
Well, I'm kind of keeping this lightness over here and sort of keeping it dark over here, but you know, those little surprises are fun too. So,
Oh, look at that. Is that like a velvet? What is
yes,
that?
it's a velvet.
Wow.
And then I have my scissors here if I want to stick one in that's not. Now, I don't know if I would do that because it's kind of in the center.
Can I play?
Sure.
All right. I know this is kind of the same, but would
Yeah,
that
and
be?
that I do that a lot. I will repeat one right after the other because it's a good way to blend to the next row.
And
But you probably want to make this.
okay. What? No.
But
what,
you don't want to you don't want to overlap that much
Oh.
because you need to make sure your strips are touching your backing.
Oh, I see what you're
Otherwise,
saying.
they're going to fly around a little bit.
Yeah. So kind of do something
yeah,
more like
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
Now I realize that when we're doing this, I see all these tails flying off the left and right.
Right, and
You-
I don't worry about those at this point. I will, once I get my whole piece done, or to my liking, then I will press it, and then I will trim those edges.
Do you ever do this? Do you ever say, "Oh, I'm just going to go back to a solid"?
Rarely.
Okay, because that doesn't look very good to me either. I just thought, "Oh, let me give that a try." Fail. All right, let me try this one though. What if I did keeping the light
Well,
over
actually,
here?
Ricky, it's time to go to the sunset.
Oh, we've got to get to the sun.
Yeah, and actually,
And because the sun's still in the sky.
yes. So here's some.
How do you make that transition?
I start with. So I would have normally have a light one here.
Okay.
So.
I know that
will,
you've got the experience now, having done this plenty, that you know it's more second nature for you to
right.
grab those fabrics.
Yes.
You've already done the trial and error. So I am not going to do any more trial and error for you. All right.
So
that
we're
looks,
getting there.
It is
we're just
luscious
about done here.
on
with
camera.
our-
It's luscious.
Actually,
it
I
feels.
think we're good with that, and now I think it's
Okay.
time to
Go to the ground.
add the ground. And here again, I will start with some darkness because I want a good value change from the light to the dark again.
I love this piece. Can you use that?
Sure, that looks silky.
I really like the look of that. I'm surprised when I first saw this stack. I wasn't expecting to see velvets and silks and so forth.
I know, but
oh,
don't they?
look at that one.
Yeah, that's some kind of linen. I always add silk for sure. And here's a nice piece of silk.
Oh,
Whoops.
that is lovely.
And then
Oh, look at the stripe that you've got.
that's
Can
going to
you
be
really
a nice.
use that?
I think we can use that.
You think?
Yeah, I think so. We need
I'm even
something
surprised that
in
the
here.
stripes are
This
kind
I
of
know
going
is going to be my
vertically.
bottom
Okay,
piece.
so you're going to make that the bottom.
Oh, I like this one. That's a hand dyed in there. Okay, now I think we can add this little stripe over here, and I think it'll look pretty fun.
I love this so much.
So I think,
Yeah.
what do you think? I think we're pretty good.
I think it's great. Now I'm going to jump forward a little bit to say you trim off your edges or
Yep.
whatever and give it
then
a
press
fuse.
it.
Give
Yep.
it a fuse, right?
Actually, I would fuse it right now, and then
take off the edges.
yeah, and
okay.
then trim the edges, not too much, because you want something to hold on to
All
when
right.
you're.
So now let's go ahead and strike that and move now to the step outs here that are showing what is the next step. So tell us
Okay.
about this.
So we've fused it and we've trimmed back our edges. So now the next step is we're going to do the quilting.
Okay. And what are you thinking about with quilting before I show it? What's in your mind?
I always like to go with the horizon, in this especially. You know, if you're doing a horizon, you want your lines to go.
Are you doing
in
free
the
motion? Are you doing walking
No,
foot?
I'm doing walking foot. So this is another reason why this is a good project for
Okay.
beginners.
And take a look at this. So here we are. We're getting started.
Always start in the center and work your way out.
Why do you do that?
In case you get any rippling, it keeps your lines straight also.
Okay. So you went this way,
Right,
and then
I
you'll
will
go
turn around
this
and
way.
go this way. And again, I use the 100-weight thread because I'm more interested in texture than I am in seeing the thread. I really don't want to see the thread.
It is
It's just a
beautiful,
personal
right?
preference.
I understand that though, and I think that's important. People need to find what works for them.
Right.
So this is a way to finish it. It's been quilted. It's a pretty simple finish. Tell us about this.
Okay, what I did was I stitched 1/4 of an inch from the edge on all 4 sides, and then I trimmed it down to 1/8 of an inch, so you just have, a tiny bit of fraying, but the whole thing has a textured, frayed kind of look to it anyway, so I think that goes along with it.
And show the hanger.
And then I came up with this little method of hanging where you take a piece of cardboard, put some picture frame wire through it, and then glue it to the back, and it's ready to hang up.
And it's ready to hang. What a beautiful, wonderful way to finish that off. And then not only, this is the one we did before, that I showed before, but talk a little bit about the way you finished that.
Okay, this one I finished in a traditional way that an art quilter would finish the edges with facings.
Okay.
So I faced it on 4
Look
edges.
at your hanger. It's a ruler.
Well, you could use this is a 6-inch ruler with a hole drilled in it, or you can use a paint stick and then make these little triangles in the corner.
Sure.
So
And this
for a
last
small
one
quid, that works.
is on a frame. So there's lots of ways that people can go
Right.
about doing this, right?
And another way would be to wrap it around a canvas totally, which I've done multiple times.
Now, if you were to expound words of wisdom to our viewers, something that's kind of touched you, something that you kind of believe in, what can we take away from you today that we don't want to miss?
Well, when I was young, I always wanted to be an artist, but thought you needed to be born with talent. And I've come to realize it takes hard work. What you really need is passion. You need the passion, and then you'll do the work, and then your work will get better the more you do it.
That's amazing, because I have to 100% agree. And we may have little different levels of talent, and somebody could be super talented, but if they're not passionate,
Right.
they're not making it.
Right.
So you have to have that drive, that determination. I tell my students, when you do something first, you're going to suck at it. And I mean, because we want to be here, but we don't get to
Right.
be here without all the work to get there.
And you need to do what speaks to you also, I think. Every subject is not going to speak to you. You may have certain, like I love birds, so I do a lot of birds.
Yeah.
And that that works for me.
Well,
Also,
and,
family.
and it shows.
things.
I mean, that's probably my takeaway from section 1 where we did your show and tell. I took away your passion. I saw what you were connecting with, and I think that everybody has to find that connection. Well, you're not done. You have more ways to abstract and give images even wonderful, powerful visual impact. We're going to learn that. You're going to share that with Alex when we come back.
Welcome back. Pat, in the last segment with Ricky, I learned something that I have never seen before, and it's a game changer for me. And it's when you took your fusible and put it on the background and then put the strips on top. And that's how you could tear the strips, get the texture.
Right. It saves a lot of time, and it's just easier. You're not putting fusible on all
Did
those
you
strips.
figure that out?
I don't know. I've been doing it for a long time like that, and I don't know where I learned it from. If I learned it.
No, I love it. Okay, so I want to, let's take a look at what we're doing here, okay? Here is a barn. Wisconsin has barns, and we love them.
Some.
And so we are going to do the barn part now.
Right. We're going to abstract an image.
And the background you did after you did the barn.
Correct.
And the question was, from Shelley, the producer, did you do the entire background, or you just kind of probably went in here and here?
I didn't do, sometimes I accidentally do the whole background, but in this case I did it just kind of leaving where the barn was going to be without the strips.
And then you machine quilted this before you actually put the barn on?
Yes, it's
Okay.
a lot easier if you do the quilting of the background first.
Exactly. All right, so barns. Let's talk about barns, and let's talk about what would you call you're doing here? Simplifying or what?
Yes, I'm simplifying an image, which is a way of abstracting it.
Okay, so let's take these two pictures here.
Okay, this is a picture I took in Appleton, in the Appleton, Wisconsin area. There's a lot of barns in where I live, or there were. They're kind of fading away because of corporate farming, and the family farm is just on its way out.
So
I'm trying to capture these memories, as my parents are both raised on a farm, so farms are kind of important to me. Yeah, and all these buildings I find have so much character that I'm trying to.
So this is the initial shot.
Yes,
one.
that was the initial picture, and then I just want to do a close-up of the building. So that's what we're going to be.
And you took this picture?
Reimagining. Yes, I took this picture.
Okay, you people are going to love this if you haven't heard about it. The app.
The app I use to help me see is called Waterlog. It's water, Logue, and it's I believe it's an Apple, only an Apple application. So, and it's so simple to use. I take a picture with my phone, and then I go into my Waterlog app. I pull up that picture, and then I can have like a dozen different options on how to recreate that as somewhat of a watercolor image.
Because look at this. It just takes well, that's the wrong one. But it just is, this is amazing.
Yeah, it really simplifies things, and it helps me see in a different manner, not so realistic.
Okay. I'm going to get that. Was it expensive?
$4.95.
I can do it. I can do it. All right,
Okay.
so now what do we do?
Once I have those images, I use those as a basis for a sketch.
You know what, let me get this out of here. I jumped you ahead. I jumped the gun, sorry.
So I do a sketch on a Post-it note, and you may wonder, why are you doing it on a Post-it note? Well, it's just another way to help me simplify the image. So I will use, use all of them. I just kind of keep them all out.
Oh, okay.
And I...
More of the waterlog ones than this one, probably?
Yeah.
Okay, then it's going to go bye-bye.
They all help in some way.
All right.
So that's basically my image, and I'll put it horizon. And I'm not very good at drawing upside down. So
I'm impressed, okay.
So that has really simplified it. I'm going to add a couple of windows.
What does that do to your brain?
Simplifies it. That's my big word. Simplifies it. Makes it so don't have all this little details to to even consider, and I'm not trying to make it square. I want it, it's more interesting when it's not perfect. I think, wouldn't this be kind of boring if I just did it like that?
Well, the work that
To
you
me.
showed in the first segment was spectacular, and it was about simplicity.
Right.
You know?
And changing it up a little, making it a little quirky. So now I've used that again now to simplify, but I'll also use it to do a value study. So what I'll determine is where I want my lights, my mediums, and my darks. I know for sure I want my roof to be dark, even though it's not like that in the photograph.
No,
that's
it's
what
not.
I want, and that's the way it's going to be.
You're in charge.
I know my sky's going to be light, so I just leave that alone. My building is going to be medium, and my ground is also going to be medium. And it
Okay.
helps to do it, to draw it out with a pencil.
Yeah, a little dark. Yeah, that needs to be darkened up.
Yeah, a couple windows, and this little window. I don't want to put those little cupolas on. I just find them a little distracting.
Okay.
So then I'm ready to turn that into a full-size sketch.
All right.
So I'll take a piece of parchment paper, and I've decided this is the size I want it to be, which is 16 by 20. And then I will use, because this is a different kind of parchment, you can't draw on it very well that it will stay, so I use this.
Let's make sure the camera sees this. Okay,
It's
what is
called
it?
a Woody by Stabilo, and it's called a 3-in-1. You can use it as a marker for when you're working with acrylics, or you can actually, if you wet it, it'll kind of turn into watercolor.
Is this like an art supply store
Yes,
thing? Okay, because
yes.
I've not seen this before.
And they come in like a little box of crayons, so it's
nice.
really fun.
Okay.
So then I'll just do another rough sketch.
And that's really, truly the purpose of the Post-it note, to help
Was
you.
simplify
yeah.
this. And now I know where I want my values too. So, and we're just working on this section here. And I know I want my roof dark, so that's going to be the first place I start auditioning my fabrics.
All right.
So I brought a couple darks along here. This is one, but to me that looks
That's-
too traditional and just kind of boring.
I'm going to move this one over here too.
Okay.
Okay.
Here's another one that's nice and dark, but it's blah, I think. And here's a nice one that's hand-dyed,
Oh, the
and
damask.
love it.
Ooh, and look at the. Are you going to leave that in? What's
Yeah.
that? It's a napkin,
It's a
right?
napkin,
and it's
yeah.
the little
The
doodah.
edge of the napkin.
Yeah. Okay.
So most likely I'm going to use that.
I like.
Now I'm going to try and figure out what I want here.
And that was medium, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
going to be medium. Here's an option. Nah. Here's another option. That one is too
It's very
much the
close,
same,
yeah.
so there's no contrast. We don't like that. I like this because it kind of picks up the blue in the roof. Mm-hmm. And
I also, because it
Ne-
looks like wood slats too.
right, yeah, it looks like it could be the side of a barn. And then this is another option.
Oh, what do you like?
Well, I don't know why, but I like this one.
Okay.
I think this one blends well with that.
It's got the. Did you dye this?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So now we're on to this piece here. Now this one I think is way too, it's a cool fabric, but I
Love
think
that
it's,
fabric.
I don't think it fits in this
Okay.
situation. What do you think?
I'm bowing to you. Oh, yeah.
This
yeah,
one
yeah.
I love. So I think this is the one we're going to go with.
Now, in this case, the fusing will be on the pieces,
Right,
correct?
yeah,
All right.
this one is different.
Okay.
So I'm going to just quickly cut these so they fit where they belong to some degree, but you know, if they're not perfect,
Well,
who's
the
gonna
thing
know?
is,
We don't like
they're,
perfect things.
no, and they're off kilter on
Right,
here, and I
yeah.
love it.
And that's kind of a little perspective and you know. Okay.
And while you're cutting that, I'm going to just bring this over. Okay, everybody. Like, look at the wonky roof there. In fact, if it weren't wonky, that'd be kind of odd, I think,
Right.
honestly.
And boring.
Yeah.
I think that looks pretty good.
You said something to Shelley about the great thing about doing this is keeping memories alive, which, again, back to the barns going bye-bye.
Right, exactly. That's one of the reasons I do it, because these barns are disappearing every day. And when I think about the farmers that built these buildings,
I think about my grandpa.
yeah, and he probably built something for a specific purpose. You know, it wasn't according to a pattern, it was what he needed. All right, so I think we're okay to press.
Wait a minute, are these things ready to go?
Yeah, sure.
Ooh. So the fusie's on there.
Yep, the fusible's on all of these pieces.
Okay. And thus
I don't know
what's
what that
the
is. Oh, yeah, that
parchment
one is-
paper underneath, so
yeah,
it
the
doesn't stick
parchment, yeah, so I can lift it off and then when I'm ready to audition for my backgrounds.
Okay.
And then I've got a few finishing pieces, like if we look back at our picture, or we can look at that one, I think it's important that this piece go on here, because it'll show the other side of the roof. And if it's too long, we just whack it.
Now, in setting up, you said to me, this is kind of like color forms.
Right.
And we go, oh yeah, color forms, we're the same age. And then another person, I don't know color forms, but she was raised in Germany, so I mean, there you go.
There you go.
Now, did you just randomly cut these things, or did you look at the picture and go, okay, I need a barn door, I need this, I need that?
I knew what I needed, so
Okay.
I cut them. But I mean, they're pretty simple shapes.
Yeah.
And look, that's not square. And since I did it once before, I kind of knew what I wanted. But all
Okay.
barn doors need that little slider thing
Oh,
on
right.
the top.
This is so great, Pat. This is great.
And it's just fun.
You've got yourself some nice fabrics.
I collect. I like to use recycled things, so I get things from the thrift store.
Like what kind of things do you look for?
Blouses.
Okay.
You can get silk blouses.
Oh,
That's my favorite thing.
all right.
There. We're basically done.
And so it goes. And so
maybe,
it goes.
Oh, there's one more I wanted to put in here. Like there's some stuff in that shed, so that makes it look like stuff.
I love it. All right, so I'm going to bring this finished one over again.
Yep.
All right. To recap, you built this, then you built the background, and you don't necessarily go all the way apart with the background.
Correct.
And then quilt this first,
Go with the background,
put this on,
and fuse this on, and then do all the additional stitching on the building.
Do you ever do like hand stitching on it and stuff like that?
No, I'm a machine person.
That's okay. Here's a couple other quilts I want everybody to look at, all right? Tell us about this quilt.
This one is called Bluefoot number 2. I had done a previous blue-footed booby, and I sold it to a woman who had been to the Galapagos. Galapagos has been on my bucket list, yeah, of places I'd like to go. So that's why I did the original one. And so she told me she had taken a picture of a blue-footed booby, and she sent me the picture and said,
The booby's waiting for you. Okay, here's another one. Now, we saw this one in the beginning, right? But let's
Right.
just recap.
This is-
How can you pull this together with everything?
first you turn it this way.
Oh, thank you. No, I like it sideways better. It fits the space. Okay.
So you can see the background is done in the manner that we showed in the first demonstration, but the bird is done abstractly. You know, it's just kind of chunky cuts, and you'll notice you're not going to see many rounded edges when I cut my fabric. When I lay them down, they may turn out a little rounded, but I like to be imprecise.
This is great. Now, business-wise, your quilts are for sale.
Yes, they are.
And so how would a person find what's for sale?
By going to my website,
Which is?
patbishop.info.
Okay. How much teaching are you doing these days?
I'm doing teaching around the state, but I'd like to get into online teaching at some point.
You can do it.
I can do it.
Do you want to get on an airplane and teach, or you want to stay in Wisconsin and Illinois?
I'm willing to travel.
Okay, great. And you know, because she's Wisconsin, she's a good person. You just know that. Pat Bishop, thank you so much for coming. This was just a joy, and I learned stuff.
Well,
And I'm
thank
not,
you.
and I'm not pulling your chain on that. Okay?
Good. Glad to hear
Thank
it.
you so
Thank you
much.
for having me.
So,
it's been fun.
Yeah, it is fun. Up next, we have Tracy Mooney here, and she's going to take Log Cabin and put a whole new spin on it and different ways to think about how to use it and all that. And I believe it's from Fat Quarters. Fat Quarters, we all have those on our body too. So stick around.
Welcome back, everyone. We're here now with Tracy Mooney. And Tracy, I'm so happy you're on the show. There are people in the quilting industry that work kind of behind the scenes and are also out in front. You get to be both.
I do.
So tell everybody a little bit about you, what you do.
I am the editor of Quilt Maker Magazine and Fons and Porter's Quick and Easy Quilts.
That's awesome. And here are those magazines. You guys, I know we love our quilt magazines. And are those done here in Colorado?
They are.
Yeah, in Golden still?
In Golden.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the reasons I moved to Colorado is because I had associations with the Rocky Mountain Quilt Museum.
Oh, yeah.
And because Golden, Colorado had all the wonderful magazines, even back when Quilter's Newsletter was here back in the day, right?
Oh, yeah.
So how fun that is that you get to be involved in seeing all the little tips and tricks that are coming, the new things that are so fresh. That has to be exciting.
It is. It also is an intense honor to be working on Quilt Maker Magazine because that is Bonnie Lehman's publication. It's been around for 40 years. So there's a really strong sense for me, at least, for history and making sure that I'm bringing quilting forward but still honoring the past.
That's wonderful. Well, speaking of the past, Log Cabin is as past as it gets, and that's what you're going to share with us today. I love this, so I'm going to let you take it away. All
Okay.
right?
So about a year and a half ago, we had done a few different log cabin designs in Quick and Easy Quilts, and a designer had submitted a log cabin using 2.5-inch strips, like a jelly roll.
Okay.
And it got sort of the wheels going, and I thought, wonder if you can do that with a fat quarter. And so,
Because we love our fat quarters,
well,
right?
I know a lot of people who just, that's their jam. So when they go into a quilt store, that's what they're grabbing. It's an easy, affordable way to get a bunch of different fabrics. And for me personally, I kind of obsess a little bit on pre-cuts. If I love a collection, but I'm not sure what I want to do with it, I'll get a fat quarter stack, or I'll get a layer cake, or I'll just get a jelly roll. You can even just get a charm pack if you don't have a big budget.
Right.
So how do you use those effectively? It was going through my mind. And so it just, once I started thinking about it, it just kept eating away until I could figure it out.
You're going to freak out. We got charm squares and fat quarters happening here,
Yes.
right?
Yes. So we should probably start with the center of the log cabin since that's the heart, right?
Okay.
So,
And even before you do that, I just want to point out this, okay? So this is a log cabin quilt, kind of where we're headed. We're seeing 4 of the 16 blocks that are in
Yes.
this, and the blocks measure finish 16 inches.
Yes,
So
correct.
you guys need to do the math on that. 16-inch blocks, 16 blocks total.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about the centers.
all right. So I love a good Tula print. And so I love
Okay.
to fussy cut her designs. And so I wanted to start with something that was big enough to sort of showcase. This is Tiny Beasts, so these aren't her big prints, but it's a little smaller, and I wanted to bring in the design and have it work mathematically with the strips.
Okay.
So
are these all Tula pink fabrics
They
that we're
are.
looking at? So I just want to kind of thumb through them just a minute. So, because not everybody's going to be familiar with, oh my gosh, these are, okay, so those are the same. Let's go to this one. All right. All right. And when you say fussy cut these, I know what fussy cut is, but I want you to describe it for us today.
So fussy cutting is a technique where you focus on a particular motif in the fabric and then cut around it. It can kind of make your fabric look like Swiss cheese a
Right.
little bit, but it's also super fun in the final design, and I just like it if I can do it.
Okay.
So let's take this fabric, for instance. There are all these adorable little trash pandas in
Okay,
here, and then
okay.
there are little elements like the apple. So what I did was I took a 5-inch square and then I sort of used it to audition and measure.
Okay.
The
Because a
design.
charm square is 5 inches, in case you guys didn't know that.
Right. And
5
if I
inches
didn't want to
square.
start in the center, I could start over here and kind of focus on this guy with this little element here.
okay.
And then you basically just cut around it.
Okay.
Do you want to give it a try?
Sure, I'll let you do that.
All right.
Sure, I'll let you do that.
All right. So what I did on mine was, if I could, I tried to center the particular motif that I was working on. So let's try and get this little dot in the center, right in the
Okay.
middle of that raccoon.
And lucky you, it's still on the edge here.
It's still on the edge. I mean, I could have done a harder one and worked over here, but
Why not?
You know.
Just make it easy.
right. So then you just work your way around.
Now, don't you dare
I'm
do
gonna-
anything.
I know.
Yeah, don't do anything you wouldn't normally do. If we have to turn this, we have to turn
don't
this.
like it, and I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to jinx myself. But
All right.
so there you go.
That looks great.
Pretty easy.
All right.
However, if you really didn't want to go to all that trouble,
Oh, yeah.
a pack of pre-cuts
Yeah.
works just
Yeah.
perfectly.
So charm packs like this would be a great center. There's going to be more than you need for the center of the
Oh,
quilt.
absolutely. I mean, you've got plenty to choose from, and you can, pick the colors that you want, whatever works.
Okay, so
But
that
easy
starts
peasy.
it. The square
Yes.
starts it. Now, this is kind of magical because this is a fat quarter, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go for the basics. You guys, hope you know what a fat quarter is, but essentially a fat quarter is a half a yard. A half a yard is 18 inches, but that typically goes across the width of the
Mm-hmm.
fabric, which is generally 42 to 44 inches. You're giving us measurements that are 18 inches, because that's a half a yard, and then half of that half yard becomes the fat quarter, so it could be 22 inches, but you're working with 20. Am I right with
I
that?
am working with 20 because not all fabrics are that wide. They're
Yeah.
not for all 44. Some of them might be 42. So we kind of chose to make it a little skinnier, but you'll also see that this whole section over here is extra.
Okay, so we're looking at, although it's white, we're looking at white fabric. It's got a little bit of texture. It is essentially 18 by 20 inches.
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
And you'll see as I show some of the fabric cuts that where those measurements line up.
All
But
right.
essentially, this is the 18-inch here.
Okay,
So we are working with 2.5-inch wide strips, and then we will subcut each of the strips. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8
okay.
strips across.
I'm going to play charades.
Okay.
I'm sitting here. I've got my rotary cutter. I'm going to measure 2.5 inches and cut.
Okay,
2.5 inches and cut. And I'm just going to cut 2.5 inches all the way across. And then on this, you now have a certain set of numbers. This is that 17? I can't
Right.
see.
It's a 17.
15.
So this first strip, you're going to cut 17 inches. You'll have an inch left over.
Waist.
Waist.
Left over. Okay?
Right.
This one's 15
15
inches.
waist.
And we're not going to use that
You
3 inches.
You might want to save that for your scrap bin or throw it away.
Right.
It's all good.
But on this one,
It uses up the entire strip. It's 5 inches and 13 inches.
okay, and 11 and 7,
Yep.
9 and 9, 7 and 11, 13 and 5, and we're back to the 15 and some scrap. And then this
then
is
that's
just
all
not,
extra.
yeah, it's just
It's not even
left
2.5
over.
inches.
Okay,
So,
all right.
so that's essentially how it works. Now, for this quilt where we did 16 blocks, you need 16 fat quarters.
That's
You can throw in
fabulous.
extra if you like. That's kind of what I did.
I love that. And also, I want to say, if you're strong or accurate, you could like layer 2 or even maybe up to 4 fat quarters.
If you feel that ambitious, you go for it.
Okay, it just makes it quicker if you can.
You
but if you're
probably could
not
also
secure,
run it through a strip cutter. You can use one of those strip cutter
Yeah,
ruler
okay.
things. All of that works just fine, just as long as you get accurate 2.5-inch strips.
all right. And so after all of the cutting,
You get this magical mess. That what I did personally was I just sort of laid them all out next to me so that I had a good assortment of each size strip and just worked my way through the pile. So
much fun.
yeah, so then what you do is you're going to lay it all out like so. and it all works clockwise, just like a normal log cabin.
Okay, I'm going to not assume everybody knows that. So
Okay.
lay your square down.
Yeah.
Add as a 5-inch.
5-inch.
Okay, and then the 7-inch.
7-inch.
Yep. And then you're just going to keep
Yep.
laying the strips as they get wider. Kind of, it can go clockwise or counterclockwise. Does it
Either
really
way,
matter?
it does
Yeah,
not
it
matter at
doesn't
all. And I
matter.
think honestly, in my quilts, there are a few that go the opposite direction.
And it
It
just
does not
doesn't matter.
matter. It's so scrappy, and there is a little trick if you do want to do the, what do they call it? The sunshine and shadows? Is
Yeah,
that what they
where you
call
have
it? Where
half
it's
darks
half
and
dark,
half-
half dark, half light. You'll need 22 of the
Fat quarters.
Fat quarters.
All right, so 16 fat quarters if you're doing it kind of just scrappy
Mm-hmm.
willy-nilly. But if you want to get into this kind of an effect where you're actually using half darks and half lights, and that's fabulous to see those options.
Oh, yeah.
Then they do need to have more, and then they're just going to have some leftovers.
They will.
We never have leftovers in our quilts. Never. We never have that happen.
Right, and you can just play with those blocks on your design wall or on the floor, however you work, and you can make up your own design. There's so many different designs, or even just, put into a search engine log cabin layouts, and you will just have so many to choose from.
Right, and the quilt that you brought today here, this quilt is essentially just let the fabrics play, put your wonderful theme blocks in the middle, and let the colors do what they want to do.
Right, and so what I would do is with these piles, I would sort of pick my center square, and then I would audition what I would go, and I'd do them one at a time. Sometimes if I wasn't feeling like I wanted to sew, I would use a few of these boards, and I would just lay out a block,
And then
do another board, lay out a block,
Okay.
and then when I had time, I'd sew.
Tell me about the boards. What are you using here?
These are Lori Holt design boards.
Okay.
I love them. They stack well. It keeps all of my fabric all together
Right.
if it's not sewn together. And then it's also it sticks up if I want to just have one in front of me so that I remember how to sew the block together. Who doesn't?
Right,
That never happens.
Sure. Okay, am I missing anything now here? We made it to the end.
No, I do want to say that I do have one little trick. While this is a very beginner-friendly block, it's also a very tricky block in some ways because there's so many seams that go together. You can easily get a little off kilter. I used Kay England's trick where when you sew this one to say this section where there's a seam,
Right.
I line up the fabric strip, this strip here, and then I flip over the block so that I can see the seam. So it doesn't flip, it doesn't get mixed
Right.
up. I can keep track of where everything is.
Right, and I understand that. So if this does get sewn together, there's going to be a seam. You're going to press it to one way and put the seam on top of
Yes.
what's going to happen.
Exactly.
And then I'm going to suggest that you just pay attention to these ends now,
Yes.
to that this new piece is the guide for making sure this is
Exactly.
the way to go.
Exactly, and as long as your cuts are accurate, your block should end up accurate.
I love this because, I think on the Quilt Show, we don't always kind of get back to the basics and do
Mm-hmm.
some things that are simple, and rubber hits the road. And if you've got a grandkid that wants to get started, if you are a new quilter and you want to get
Mm-hmm.
started, this is a great way to get started. I don't want to move along yet until we look at the small version, okay? Because you took it a little bit differently.
I did.
And tell us about that one.
So I also love, like my favorite pre-cut is 10-inch squares, but then what do you do with them? It's 10 inches of fabric, and it's kind of tricky. So I thought, what could I do with using this same technique, but with a 10-inch square?
Okay,
And
how
so
wide are these?
These are 1.5 inches.
So cut 1.5 on all of this
Yes.
across, and you've got some left over.
Yep, got a little
Right.
bit of leftover, and do measure your blocks because not all 10 inches are the same. Sometimes you get a little wonky,
Right.
and be sure to make sure it's
What
it's the
size is
square.
the center square for this? Do you remember?
It's
okay
that's
if
a
you
good
don't.
question. I think it's just 1.5 by 1.5.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
And then these are cut.
So these aren't as efficient. you get a 9.5, a 4.5, and a 5.5. You get a 3.5 and a 6.5, a 7.5, and an 8.5. And then you can cut your 1 inch from here. I guess I should have marked off that one and I missed it.
That's okay, but
1
look
inch
at this,
there.
you guys. It makes the front cover, and they chose it. This wasn't your
Yeah,
choice, right?
I took myself out of the running once I knew that they had photographed it.
And-
you need a light layer cake and a dark layer cake.
Yes, come
Hey!
in, Alex. Because look at this. I mean, it's the same version. It's going to
But
take
just
you
small.
longer, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's going to take you longer. But how wonderful is that? You think, Alex?
Yeah, I'm just sitting there watching the whole thing. I think it's great. And I would never in a million years have thought that you could do this using layer cakes.
Yeah.
Never.
I mean, I felt a little crazy halfway through because it's 1.5
Yeah,
inches,
it
so
was
it
just 'cause
takes a
it's
while.
smaller, yeah,
but
it
it was so pretty that I
Yeah.
couldn't stop.
Yeah, you're going to love it forever. All right, so I've had a great time. Thank you
So
so
have
much.
I. Thank
it's
you so
great to
much.
have you here. And we want to say thank you so much to Pat Bishop today for the inspirational, wonderful abstractions that she did in those quilts. I think it's just been super. So it's been a fabulous day. I've loved it. I've loved being back together.
I know.
Thank you, Tracy,
I
again
know.
for being
You.
with us.
The best, man. The
Yeah.
best.
You guys, you're awesome. And remember, it's a new day
Every day.